Hello everyone, welcome to Come Sit at My Table. We're Tom and Melissa and we appreciate you being here. Today is Sunday and you know what that means. Today is Subscriber Sunday where we're going to do another recipe that was sent to us from a subscriber. Today's recipe comes from Sally Eakin. Sally, I hope that's how you pronounce your last name. From Bonneville, Illinois. Now, the recipe that she has sent to us actually comes from her great-grandmother. It's a recipe for a cookie that's called an English drop cookie. But Sally and her mom have kind of renamed it a coffee cookie. Now, before you turn me off here and say, oh, coffee, I don't like coffee, I'm not doing this one. Coffee is an ingredient in it, but it is not necessarily going to have the coffee flavor. I don't know because I've never made it. But I do know that Melissa and I put coffee in things like chocolate cake, and you can't taste the coffee. It just enhances the flavor. So we're going to have to make this to find out if it has coffee flavor or not, but don't give up on it just yet. Now, Sally sent a nice letter with her recipe, and I'm going to read part of that to you. It says, when I viewed your video titled Mama's Macaroni Salad, I knew I had to share my great-grandmother's recipe for English drop cookies, which we call coffee cookies. These cookies were one of my dad's favorite cookies. I have enclosed a copy of the recipe from my great-grandmother's cookbook, and I want to show you that. This is the recipe that came out of her great-grandmother's cookbook. Look at this over here. It's very faded, hard to read, but isn't that interesting? I love recipes like that that have been passed down through the generations. Plus a copy which my mother had written out many years ago because the original cookbook itself had become fragile. And here's the one that Sally's mom had written out in her own handwriting. Isn't that cool? I love that kind of thing. All right, it says, one thing that I noticed throughout the cookbook is that there are very few oven settings mentioned. If they do mention a setting, it would read something like a moderate oven for about 12 minutes. So in those old recipes, and my grandmother had some recipes like that too that she had written out, it didn't really give directions. It would give a list of ingredients, didn't tell you what order to mix them in, and it rarely told you an oven temperature or time. It would say bake in a moderate oven until done. So you just have to kind of interpret those and try the best you can. Now, Sally does recommend that we bake these at 375 for 8 to 12 minutes. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take her recommendation. She also said, I would like to mention to those people who don't drink coffee, that would be Melissa and me, we are not coffee drinkers, please try these cookies anyway. I'm not a coffee drinker, however, I have enjoyed these cookies on many, many occasions. So we're going to give these coffee cookies or these English drop cookies a try today. Let's talk about what we're going to use to make Sally's cookies. We're going to start with 2 cups of brown sugar, and I have packed those in a little bit. I didn't pack them in as tightly as I could have, but I did pack that sugar in quite a bit. We're also going to use 2/3 cup of shortening. Now, when I read shortening in a recipe, I automatically think about Crisco. So that's what we're using. And you can see that I have taken the back of my knife and marked right there where the 2/3 cup mark is. You can see right there, it says 2/3 of a cup. Can you see that, Melissa?
Yes.
Does that show up? So I've marked that with the back of my knife so that when I open it, I will know where to cut to get my 2/3 of a cup. Excuse me. We're also going to use 2 eggs, 1 cup of cold coffee. I think it's very important that you know that the coffee must be cold. You don't want to put hot coffee into your sugar mixture or it will probably just melt that sugar. So Sally even said in her letter that her mom would save 1 cup of coffee from their breakfast to use later that day or in the evening to make these cookies. So make sure it's cold. We're going to use 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Now, another note here, Sally does say in her recipe, and it does say on the recipe from her mother and great-grandmother, that it's 3 cups or more. And her mom even wrote a note out from it and said, yes, more. So I kind of suspect that 3 cups is where we're going to have to start, and we may have to add a little bit at a time until we get the dough thick enough to be a cookie dough. But we'll see. We're starting with 3 cups like the recipe says. Then we're going to use 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and it says 1 pinch of salt. Now, to stir in at the end, we're going to add 1 cup of nuts and 1 cup of raisins. The recipe from Sally's great-grandmother just said nut meat, which means you can use pretty much any nut, whatever nut you want to use. Sally recommended walnuts. And so the first time I make a recipe, I make it the way the author or the person who shared it says to make it. So I'm using walnuts, and I'll just be frank with you. Walnuts are not our favorite nut. Melissa and I much prefer pecans, but you know, they may be fantastic in this cookie. And if Sally says she thinks that's the best, that's what we're using today. So 1 cup of nuts, today it's walnuts, and a cup of raisins. And if you know me, you know I'm using golden raisins. I love golden raisins. All right, I'm going to lay Sally's recipe right here where we can refer back to it. We're going to move over to our mixer and start putting everything together. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but on Sally's recipe, it really doesn't have directions. It just has a list of ingredients. So we're going to have to figure out what order we're going to put things in. Most recipes that have a shortening and a fat, sugar and a fat, like shortening or butter, you cream those together first. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We are going to cream those 2 together, and I'll probably let that run for, a minute and a half, until it looks like it's creamed together and the sugar is starting to melt into the Crisco. And then we'll add everything else. Our sugar and our Crisco have been creaming together. So now I'm going to add our eggs, and we will do that 1 at a time, just to make sure that I get no shells in there and that the eggs are good. That one had a double yolk. I've been told that's a sign of good luck. And there's our second egg. In it goes. And now we are going to just slowly drizzle in our coffee. Let that mix in as it runs. And that is starting to really blend up now. Looking really good. I can smell the coffee.
That smells really good.
It smells wonderful. I've always said I wished it tasted as good as it smells.
Lots of people would say it does.
I know they would. We're not. And I wish I was. I have tried. I just don't like it. Okay. Now, I'm going to turn that off for just a second and get it out of my way while I combine our baking powder, baking soda, and salt. So, a pinch of salt. We'll put that in. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And that goes. And then I'll just kind of mix those together a little bit. Just just to make sure they get combined a little bit before we put it all in. Okay. Now, you know, I'm going to use this shield. Actually, I better put it down in there because I make a mess with flour, don't I? We'll lock that in. Let me grab a spoon. All right, here we go. We're going to add the flour, just a spoonful at a time. Can you see that, babe? We'll let that mix in a little bit before we put another spoon or two in. And I will have to scrape the sides of the bowl. I am not using my scraper blade because one of our subscribers said to me they thought the reason that we were having trouble slinging flour all over the kitchen counter was because we were using the scraper blade. That the original blade that came with the KitchenAid wouldn't do that. So I have switched back to using the original blade, and I think they're right. I don't think it throws out as much flour as it does when I use that scraper blade. So,
But it doesn't scrape the bowl either.
it doesn't scrape the bowl, which means then I have to stop it and scrape the bowl. So I guess you just have to decide which one's most important. And for me, I don't like that it slings the flour everywhere, so I guess I'll stick with this original blade. And that is looking really good. And I'm just going to pour the rest of it in. Just kind of, there we go. Now, let's stop this. And I think that looks, I don't know, Melissa. I think it's going to take a little more. I don't think it's quite as thick as cookie dough. Look at that. I think Sally's mother and grandmother, great-grandmother were right. I think it's going to take some extra flour. But I want to scrape the sides before I do that. Ooh, and I love the color of that. Okay, let's let it run a second while I rinse my fingers. And I think I'm going to have to put some in. So give me just a minute to grab the flour. All right, I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup at a time until we get it to the point that I think it's as thick as cookie dough should be. And then we will stir in our raisins and our walnuts. Now, I think it still needs more. So now we're up to 1/2 of a cup. Oh, I think it's getting there. It's starting to look more like cookie dough. But I think it still needs a little more. I'm going with another 1/4. This is going to make 3/4 extra. And I'm going to stop that and look at it. Actually, I'm just going to take this off and look at it. Let's see. Let's raise it up and see what we think. Oh, it's getting there, but it's not quite there, is it? I'm going to try it without the shield on. Watch me have flour all over me. Let's try another one. This is an extra cup. So now we're up to 4 cups of flour. I still think it needs a little more. It's not as thick as what I think cookie dough should be. It's getting there though. What do you think, Melissa?
Well, I think it looks thick enough.
Do you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not very good at this kind of stuff. I like it. I'm the person that wants the recipe. That's me.
I know. You want it spelled out exactly, and you don't want to deviate from that recipe,
I
do
don't
you?
want to have to do the guessing.
You know?
But also, no, you don't want your cookies to run all over your cookie sheet.
But you know what? I think that might be okay. I think we could go another 1/4 cup. Yeah, I think I'm going to, because I don't want them to run all over the cookie sheet. So I am going to go 1/4 more. So this is going to make us a total of 4.5 cups of flour. And I am stopping there. That's going to be it. And Susan, Sally, I'm going to blame you if I put too much in. Because your recipe said or more. No, I think that's perfect right there. That's perfect. Look how it's holding on to the beater. That's really nice. Wow, and I love the color of this batter. Isn't that really nice?
It smells good.
It smells wonderful. You know what it smells like?
Coffee.
Coffee. Yum. Okay. Let me get this scraped off, and then we'll stir in the nuts and the raisins. All right, it's time to stir in our raisins and our nuts. So we're just going to put those in, and then we will use a spatula to fold those into the dough. And I'm telling you, I think this dough is really nice. It is just the perfect consistency as far as I'm concerned. So I think you should do exactly what the recipe says. I think you should start at 3 cups, but don't be surprised if you have to add some. How much did we end up adding? 4.5, I think. 4.5 total. So we added an extra 1.5 cups. And I'm going to tell you, this smells wonderful. Now, this is a cookie dough. And cookie doughs have a tendency, when they're baking, to really spread. And that's what makes them a cookie, right? But I always like to refrigerate my cookie dough first, just so it doesn't spread too much. I like a thicker cookie that doesn't spread so much. So I'm going to stick this in the refrigerator for probably 15-20 minutes. Let it chill just a little bit. Then we'll come back and scoop out our cookies and bake some. Our cookie dough batter has actually been in the refrigerator for longer than 15 minutes because Melissa's parents called and we started talking to them and left it in there. Yeah, left it in there a little longer, and that didn't hurt a thing. All right, so I've scooped out 6 dough balls, and we're going to bake it at 375. Sally suggested 8 to 12 minutes, so I'm going to start with 8, and we'll check them and see how long it takes. Everybody's oven is calibrated a little differently, so yours may take a little less or a little more. So you'll just have to keep an eye on them and watch them. Now, I will tell you, this really does have a coffee smell to it. I'm excited to try these. I can't wait for them to come out and just to see what they taste like. So we're going to go in for 8 minutes, then we'll see what they're like. Our cookies baked for 9.5 minutes, which is almost right in the middle of what Sally said they should bake. She said 8 to 12, and our oven is just a little hot. So 9.5 seemed to be just right for us. And I'm going to tell you, they look delicious and they smell really good. All right, babe, are you taking the first bite?
Sure.
Miss Non-Coffee Drinker?
I know. I can taste the coffee, but it's not overwhelming.
It's not strong.
It's not at all.
Mm-mm.
It actually smelled stronger while you were making them than what it tastes.
Absolutely. That's delicious. It has a hint. I'm going to tell you, if I didn't know there was coffee in it, I don't think I can pick it out. And the walnuts are perfect. We don't use many walnuts, but I would use walnuts in this again.
Yeah, it's a good choice for
Sally's right. The raisins are a surprise for somebody who's not had these. Of course, we knew they were in there. But if I had not had these before, I couldn't look at these cookies until there were raisins. So that would be a surprise. If I owned a bakery, I would sell these cookies in a bakery. They are that good. They're not, it's hard to explain. They're not overwhelmingly any flavor. It's just, man, it's really good. It's a good combination of flavors. Very good cookies. Sally, we do appreciate you sending in this recipe. English drop cookies are a hit in this house. We love them. Wow, that's good. I will keep some of those in our freezer all the time. All right, if you would, we would sure appreciate you going right below the video and clicking the like button. Hit that share button and share it to your own page. And then if you haven't before, we would appreciate you clicking the subscribe button, the little notification bell, and the word all. That just joins you to our channel so you'll never miss another video. Also remember that right under the video, Melissa always puts the written recipe in the description box. If you'll go down there and find where it says English drop cookies, she might also put coffee cookies in parentheses or something, and click in that box, it will expand and you'll find the written recipe right there with our contact information under it. Now this is a subscriber recipe and we have plans to continue the Subscriber Sunday series. So if you would like to send in a recipe, we would love to see it. We do have quite a few recipes. It's going to take us a while to get through all of them, but if you've got one that is tried and true, we want recipes that you've used for years and that your family loves, and you want to send it to us for us to consider using, please send it. We'd love to have it.
And the holidays are coming up, so be thinking about things that you really think are great treats for holidays.
That's right. Yeah, we're pretty much to the fall of the year now. And so, this is the season that I really start to think about baking and cooking. And a lot of people like to bake in the fall, and the holidays are coming up. So send us some of those recipes if you'd like. We'd love to have them. All right. Thank you so much for watching our video. We do appreciate it. And as always, we want you to remember that you are always welcome to come sit at our table. But we also want you to remember that God loves you, and so do we. Have a great day.